Bankruptcy firm Mitchell, Cunningham and Bowling realizes many people are worried about their finances. We're here to guide you through the next steps to restart your life with easy video appointments. New clients don't have to leave home to get information about becoming debt-free. Also, convenient in-office appointments are available at the low cost of $340 upfront for a Chapter 13. You can be on your way to being debt-free. Contact Mitchell, Cunningham and Bowling today or visit our website at mcdebtfree.com. We are here to help you.
Mississippi's trusted weather experts. This is Mississippi Live Weather at 6.
Welcome to 6. Welcome to Mississippi Live Weather, and welcome to 2026. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lawpon. Thank you so much for supporting us here on Mississippi Live Weather on was a very nice, mild sort of day, and we expect that we're going to be tracking even milder temperatures ahead. Could be near 70 of the extended forecast. Still a little ways before we get there. And between now and then, one thing that unfortunately has also increased is the drought conditions. Drought is expanding again. Thing we haven't been able to kick so far. Typically this is our wet season. We just haven't really had it happen to this point here. I mean, let's be clear. We haven't had a real tornado event either. And I'm not just throwing that out there. I'm to say that we've been extremely fortunate because we always say you're a lot more likely to see tornadoes than snowfall on Christmas. So we've been very, very fortunate at this point, but that means that we haven't had a lot of storm systems. That means drought is expanding, but we do have some storms possible tomorrow. And I'll throw right now out there, no tornadoes, nothing like that out of this. It's not overly strong, and most of us, honestly, probably aren't going to see any storms as far as tomorrow's chances are concerned. So we're tracking how much we could be dealing with on rainfall there as we see a return to warmth ahead, as I already alluded to, 70 plus, not out of the realm of possibility with a pretty sharp pattern change ahead. But this evening, it's still 53 as of 7. We're 48 degrees at 10 p.m. as we look at our first 12 here, down to 45 by 1 o'clock in the morning, as well as 4 a.m. We're starting to saturate the atmosphere again, get a little more moisture in here, try to get it to turn into some precipitation. It'll take a little time before that happens. It'll be mainly light stuff, but as a lot of folks head back to work for tomorrow, still a few more days before we go back to school, but I think that work forecast is going to include some rainfall for that latter part of the commute there as well. Mississippi Live Weather Radar, looking here on Mama Justice Doppler radar. We are in the dry with only a few clouds out there at this point and time. I alluded to this a minute ago. The drought monitor continues to expand. As you can see here, we now have where you see in that kind of orangish color there, level 3, what technically we would call severe drought in play at this point versus where we have been. Give me a moment here. I'm going to make this lapse over the course of the last couple of days so I can show you kind of the change that we have had. It might not let me actually show you the change on that there, but certainly there's an expansion because now everybody is under at least level 1 drought. And that's just kind of a sign of where we have been. If you look over the last 30 days at precipitation, it just has not been particularly impressive. I mean, most locations were somewhere around a quarter to at most a third of the rainfall that we typically should have seen in December. And that's, going back a deficit that, in many cases is up there, in some cases, more than 2.5 inches versus where we would typically expect to see over that same period in time there. And looking over the course of the last year, many spots pretty close to normal, but still for locations out there into the Delta, Clarksdale, back toward around Charleston, back up toward Batesville, where the deficit has been the most pronounced for some of those folks there. So then no shock, of course, that we're not seeing anything on Mississippi Live Weather Radar this evening because that generally has been the pattern. But those high and thin clouds are the story. As they continue to kind of spread through the area, we expect we'll start to saturate a little bit more moisture closer to the surface ahead. In the near term, low pressure moving in from the west. This is really what's going to bring us our next rain chance, but it's still waiting on moisture. See, ahead of this, we have the Gulf of Mexico that's kind of wide open here. You kind of see with those dots. That is trying to allow some moisture to start moving northward, but there's just not a ton that's actually made its way northward. That's why it takes time as this low provides the lift. The Gulf provides a little moisture. You can see there we go, kind of a better shield of what's still light rainfall, but rainfall starting to get slightly more close to us and arguably slightly more organized there as we head into the overnight hours. Now, this could lead to some sprinkles, some showers for your morning commute on your Friday. Also plotted on here is this warm front. That will also represent a little bit more warm air coming in, and we'll have, I think, a pretty decent north to south temperature contrast on your Friday. Some spots nearly 70, other spots only low 50s out there because of those showers. So a big difference, and we owe it to that frontal system. More on how that times out for you in a couple of moments. You can see clearly on the next 24 here, rain chances going from 44, again, with those very light showers, maybe really only sprinkles on the windshield. It's enough to possibly connect the dots on the roadway and slow folks down a little bit, because that always extends those stopping distances a little bit. We're 50 by 9 a.m. with rain chances up to 30% coverage, 40% there by noontime, maybe taking a little bit of dip around 3 p.m. and then picking back up in coverage into tomorrow evening. And yes, there will be some rumbles of thunder that do mix in there, and possibly from time to time some thunderstorms with a couple of wind gusts. These are not expected to be severe. In fact, expected to be way below severe limits, thankfully, but those rumbles do get close-ish to us. We'll track where they're most likely. Here in 60 seconds, we're also looking at your SEC football forecast from Carl Hogan Toyota. Of course, we are now, 55 minutes away from the kickoff of the Ole Miss game there in the Sugar Bowl against Georgia. And a lot of folks looking forward to that there. We'll have the very latest on that forecast, the Duke's Mayo Bowl. I think we'll get a score update also on that Alabama game over there in the Rose Bowl as Mississippi Live weather continues here from the Room to Room Weather Center in 60 seconds.
Frozen pipes can cause serious damage. That's why Absolute Restoration is giving away free faucet covers to our community while supplies last. Installing them is easy. Just slide the foam sleeve over your outdoor faucet and secure it snugly. Also remember to disconnect hoses, open cabinet doors under sinks, and let faucets drip during extreme cold. Call or text to check availability, and from our family to yours, please stay warm and protected.
Even though Gabe grew up in Alabama, Mississippi has now become his home and his family. And one thing about Gabe is he keeps his family safe.
People tell me how lucky my daughter is to have been adopted. But really, we're the lucky ones. Learn more at adoptuskids.org.
This portion of Mississippi Live weather is presented by Little's Jewelers.
Right now, from the Room to Room Weather Center, here's Mississippi's Chief Meteorologist, Matt Lobhon.
Well, good evening in Winona. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lopon. You're watching Mississippi Live weather after topping out in the 60s today. Those high, thin clouds moving into Montgomery County. Again, not going to be filtered starlight tonight. You know, I was talking to a friend yesterday. They were asking, what is that ring around the moon? That's what we call a halo. The ice crystals that make up these high clouds, they refract that moonlight as it comes toward us, or starlight, and you get that little ring that shows up there. I didn't think you'd learn that in the Room to Room Weather Center here today on what are, again, dry conditions at this point. Good evening to all those folks out there in Montgomery County. In Oxford there, we know everybody is looking not at the sky, but that TV guide, or getting ready to watch the Sugar Bowl there. Super excited on exactly how that's going to end up playing out for the good folks there, in Oxford and Ole Miss. And speaking of that, we're looking at that SEC football forecast, and it is looking like it is in good shape as well. Let's talk about that here. First and foremost, we'll, I think, actually give you the weekend forecast first, because if you're planning on staying around here, I think we're in really great shape. As you can see, 56, that temperature for Saturday afternoon, and 54 for Sunday. Now, both of those are cooler than we were today, still staying milder as the pattern stays mild, and eventually we will dry things back out. I think the first part of Saturday, we do at least have some rain chances to continue into the day. So definitely watching that in more detail. But yeah, I mean, just kind of checking the app here as well. One of the cool things is we've been watching that forecast for the Rose Bowl there, and certainly things have fortunately worked out pretty well in that one for the game. Unfortunately, not working out very well for Alabama, though. Current score on that one, sitting in the fourth quarter. There are 2 minutes left at 38-3 in favor of Indiana. Man, That's a crazy year for those Indiana Hoosiers there. Coming from a basketball school to see a basketball school do well in football gives my Kansas heart a little bit of hope there. Sorry for, of course, all those Alabama fans on that one. Carl Hogan Toyota sponsoring our SEC football forecast there. As you can see, 60, that first play temperature down there in New Orleans. Obviously, the weather a non-factor because that's a dome game. We expect the 52 to be that first kickoff temperature there for the folks making their way to the Duke Mayo Bowl in the Charlotte area. With 50 by halftime of that game for Mississippi State and 49 by the conclusion, keeping it dry, keeping it cloudy. And obviously that's a little bit cool, but not too terribly bad. Now, around North Mississippi, if you're sticking around here, focused around here, we're going to continue to have rain chances on the increase for tomorrow, including the chance for perhaps a few thunderstorms. Now, we're thinking it's going to be in the evening if we see some thunderstorms. And honestly, we are not expecting them to be overly heavy or strong or severe, thankfully. But obviously, we'll be watching that potential there. I think most of the severe weather chance will be to the south. We'll break down that in a lot more detail come up here after the next commercial break as the why. But we'll, of course, show you where those storms are here in a minute. I'm adjusted top of the radar. We are dry and clear at this time, but obviously clouds on the increase for that as we progress into tonight and the early morning hours of your Friday. So there, as you can see, into Arkansas, 10 p.m., latest update on our HRRR model. A few more showers and sprinkles showing up at that point in time on there. That'll continue to kind of spread into our area as we progress toward around 2 o'clock in the morning. And the thinking on this is, again, most of this is going to really struggle to probably make it all the way down to the ground as that continues to kind of spread in from west to east. This is largely going to be, again, evaporating before it gets down to the surface. Low temperatures, we're going 46 there in Holly Springs and 47 in Santobia and South Haven there. 48 in Greenwood, 45 though in Bruce. And again, this is that moisture. You can kind of see it here as we have the near 50-degree temperatures on the kind of western portion of the area versus out here in Red Bay at 42 and 41 there in Hamilton. So the clouds do insulate to a certain extent. Here are the showers increasing. And again, maybe a rumble with that one there near Oxford. Not impressed by what we're looking at there. More likely, this is just moderate rainfall as opposed to any storms through the day. 10 a.m. kind of peak coverage of the first round. It's not even, doesn't really end, so there's no true difference between the rounds, but kind of the first batch of rainfall there kind of moving through, as you can see, 10, 11 o'clock toward around midday there on your Friday. As that kind of lifts to the north and east and continues to progress toward the north and east, we see a little bit of a break here as we head toward early afternoon, maybe overdone a little bit on Futurecast there, but then the showers start picking up a little bit more. What's happening? Moisture coming in from the Gulf of Mexico, riding over top of this front. I think there's more lift as we go into the afternoon as our center of low pressure gets closer to us, but there's also more moisture in that combination. Maybe first of the reasonable rumbles there closer to Iuka by around 6 p.m. and a greater quantity of those later in the afternoon. But look at this north-south temperature contrast. We're 55 up here in Iuka versus 61 degrees in Houston and about 67 down in Kosciuszko. So that's a pretty decent northeast to southwest contrast there because of this warm front. Now, looking at some storms, we have a couple more of those starting to show up here, 8 p.m., 9 p.m. or so near the Alabama state line. As you can see, there's a few back here near Aberdeen, stretching toward Columbus and Fayette, Alabama. Those are spawned by this front. So while I depict it maybe just a little bit north here, the thinking is that we're going to continue to probably have, again, a few of those thunderstorms becoming more likely farther north, wherever this front is. So if it lands a little bit farther south, that could push those slightly farther south. Either way, that is our focal point, and as soon as it exits, so does our real threat for any kind of active weather or storms related to this. There will be a few showers on the backside into Saturday. We'll track that for you here in just a moment. So low temperature Saturday morning, going 46 degrees in Booneville, 49 in Tupelo. We're 47 in Bruce, 49 degrees in Grenada, and 51 there in Greenwood, 52 in Kosciuszko. Normal's 34, so everybody's way above that. And again, that moisture part of the reason why. So here's kind of a rebirth of a few showers on the backside of this storm system. You can see starting to develop there as go toward 9 to 10 o'clock in the morning. We have the northerly winds, so it is colder air behind this, which is why we're a bit cooler for those low temperatures by Sunday. As we widen things out a bit, you can tell that that front, again, kind of shoving the moisture east, and there will be at least a limited severe weather threat for locations down here in the South Georgia, South Alabama, and back there into the Florida Panhandle. Our friends down at Panhandle Weather will be tracking that and any issues that they have. this is their tornado season, believe it or not, down around the coast. If they see it, this is the time of year where that happens. So for whatever reason you have plans to take you down that direction, you want to download the Panhandle Weather app. It's very similar to the Mississippi Live Weather app in a lot of ways, but they have live coverage there. For whatever reason, there's severe weather any time of the year. You want to check them out. Kind of like me. They don't have to worry about the TV station of it. They can cut in anytime, which is great for that. So keep that in mind if you, for whatever reason, have to go there and kind of check that out. So north winds on this, again, drier air behind this system, and then dropping temperatures, the story as we look into early morning on your Sunday. So rainfall, as far as that's concerned, over the next couple of days, where you see the darker greens on here, that's where we have more thunderstorms depicted in our projection. So it just as easily, rather being right over Columbus, could be a county north or a little bit farther north than that. So it's wherever kind of that front sets up is where we'll have the greatest quantity. But it's kind of a lottery. A lot of folks, a couple hundredths of an inch, that's not going to make any dent in the drought that we have. And other locations, half inch, 3/4 of an inch of rainfall, not impossible. So if you get under that one thunderstorm, worked out for you. If you didn't, it's, not, obviously. So this is our contrast in temperatures there with that cooler air coming in from the north and west by Saturday afternoon. We're 49 there in South Haven versus 59 in Bruce and Eupora for the high temperature, and then lower 60s down here for Columbus, Macon, and Aliceville. Certainly behind that front, it will be a bit cooler. Speaking to that fact, I might not be able to pull that up. I'll see if I can get that up in a commercial break. I'm not going to promise something I can't guarantee I'll get up, but I'll get it for 10 o'clock if I can't. We'll look at the hour by hour on that temperature drop, because I think that's one thing maybe a little deceiving on the high temperature map, is that temperature dropping in the afternoon on your Saturday with enough cool air behind that. So 50% on that rain coverage for your Friday. We expect things to dry out as we head into your Saturday. 56 to high on Saturday. For a lot of spots in the afternoon, it's not going to be particularly warm. And then drier, cooler air coming in behind the system. We're down back to close to the freezing point by early Sunday morning. We're 54 for Sunday afternoon. We are 62 as we look toward Monday. And these are those building temperatures we were talking about into next week, as we are tracking, obviously, an increase there and back to practically the 70s. I mean, which are record highs for this time of year around the 70-degree point. So I know we're going to be record levels there, but certainly it's a pretty substantial warm-up. We're looking at that, how storm chances look in the extended, and honestly breaking down what we call CAPE, which is convective available potential energy, and how that kind of relates where tomorrow's storm chances are, and why, honestly, we're not particularly convinced that we're going to see severe weather with this. Thankfully, we're tracking all the latest on that here from the Room to Room Weather Center as Mississippi Live Weather continues right after this.
You may see a teen struggling to find his way. At Boys and Girls Clubs, we see a teen gaining the confidence and skills to land his first job. Kids today need people to see their potential and help them achieve it. At Boys and Girls Clubs, we do whatever it takes to help kids succeed. Because when we see young people, we see limitless possibilities. Do you? Join us, Boys and Girls Clubs. Great futures.
What I thought was a complete life was nowhere near complete. But it is now.
Learn about adopting a teen at adoptuskids.org.
Welcome back here at 6:18. I'm Chief Meteorologist Matt Lopon. Let's do a deep dive here into the storm chances for tomorrow. I'm just not impressed by what we're looking at. There's just not a ton of moisture to work off with this. So let's look at Futurecast here and we'll kind of break it down a little more in depth than we did just a moment ago there. Because again, 9:30, 10 o'clock, we do show the first of these kind of thunderstorms down here toward Reform and Millport. As we mentioned, the positioning of where that front is critical on exactly where these develop. And so the positioning on our projections here on our HRRR model, we kind of have that there closer to the Columbus area. Watch how those storms get a little bit heavier by, say, around 10 o'clock or so. And you can just pretty much plot on right where at least this model has that front, right? I don't think there's a scenario where this turns into tornadoes. Let's be perfectly clear. That's just not what's going to end up happening out of this. But it's not inconceivable that you get maybe a hailstone out of it, believe it or not. Sometimes what we call elevated storms like this can produce that. And so as we head towards, say, 11 o'clock or so, The majority of that activity out here into Alabama and gradually moving out. So it's just a narrow window where maybe we have enough to produce some thunderstorms. I mean, you can still see here, even there toward around 3 o'clock in the morning, it's pretty easy. Right there where I was kind of pointing out, or where I kind of put it on here, where we still kind of have that warm front generally in here. So I plotted it one way with kind of the automated front a minute ago there, but right there is kind of where that front is, and we kind of have our low pressure center, somewhere like that. So very near that front, there will be a few heavier thunderstorms, arguably maybe a stronger thunderstorm, but in general, most of those storms will probably not qualify as that. And as we kind of alluded to a minute ago, we owe a lot of the reason for that to what we call CAPE, convective available potential energy. And so this shows how that energy, that fuel from the Gulf of Mexico, is just going to lag. It's down here in central South Mississippi. That's where it is solidly at here out in the Delta, 4:30 on your Friday. Now, we do see that kind of diminish as we head into the overnight hours. But remember, we had, again, a couple of those thunderstorms that were there very near the Alabama state line. There's two components that go into CAPE, really. There's the overall profile, the way the atmosphere is stacked with moisture and temperature, and that either makes the atmosphere stable or unstable. But one of the main factors in determining our surface stability is the heating and moisture. So a lot of times I'll just call that fuel. I'll just say moisture. But it's that combination of heating and moisture. At night, we lose the heating. We don't have the sun beating down on this part of the earth. And so that's the reason this diminishes and yet stays there to a certain extent, because there's still just enough instability showing up just south of us. So if this were to pull even a little bit farther north, the chance of getting maybe one or two of those storms to be a little bit stronger would increase. But clearly you can see there's kind of a cutoff there where that warm front is limiting how far that gets into our area. And yet still, as we go toward midday on Saturday on this projection here, we do still have a little bit of instability trying to get closer. So not inconceivable to have a rumble with this on Saturday, even into the day with kind of that last wave coming in. But in all likelihood, the lift, which is kind of the other component, the front that would get those storms going, we look right at that boundary or ahead of that typically for more active weather. That's likely to be the south. And that's what I think keeps that solidly to our south. So our severe weather threat, as you can see on our Saturday here, is not for our area. It's to locations to the south and east of us. In saying that, we talked about this at 5 o'clock. It's not inconceivable again to have some thunderstorms back up into our area. That's where this, I don't want to call this a level 0 risk. We typically only show the marginal or level 1 risk and great or limited risk there. But in saying that, it's not inconceivable again to get some rumbles up closer to us. So if for whatever reason your plans are super sensitive to that, keep that in mind for your Saturday. When we look beyond Saturday, we do start to see, again, very few chances for more active weather. We're looking here at that combination of instability or fuel, what we call CAPE. That's depicted with the oranges here. And then the jet stream, which kind of shows us where the more disturbed weather is coming in. And so looking through your Saturday into your Sunday, we kind of have this general sort of northwest sort of flow there. And that northwest flow is going to kind of keep us in a zone where we're just not going to be bringing in a lot of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. Kind of keeps us milder into probably Monday, but then those temperatures start to shift a little bit. As the big trough kind of gets a little more organized back toward the west, and we have more westerly flow in here, that allows us to kind of build. We get stuck in a pattern where day in and day out, a little warmer Tuesday, a little warmer into Wednesday. Now, when we start getting toward the middle of next week, we start to get a few little waves coming associated with this jet stream. We've had a couple of days for the Gulf of Mexico to open up and bring us a little bit more moisture. As a result, you start to see a little bit more of that CAPE, that fuel, down there into Texas as we head towards, say, Thursday, a week from today. And that's when our rain chances start to get slightly greater. Because if you look closely, we start to show beneath this blue, kind of just a little bit of that color there starting to show up in the very limited amounts of fuel there. This is our GFS model. By no means is it my favorite model, but it's the one that I think best illustrates this at this point, that you then start to see a little flare up there. We have a little bit more fuel by, say, the next Friday. So not tomorrow Friday, but a week from Friday there, the 9th. Looking toward maybe the 10th to 11th, that's some more fuel getting up in here. And the fact we have southwest winds aloft, this pattern does shift a little more active, possibly a greater likelihood to maybe get some stronger thunderstorms in by not this coming weekend, but the weekend after that. So I guess both are the first full weekend. So that'd be the second full weekend there in January. So the pattern, when you get into the southwest flow aloft, if you can get some moisture up here, that's one that tends to have more in the way of strong to severe thunderstorms. So something to keep in mind there in the extended forecast. Part of the reason why it's always a good time to be thinking ahead and thinking about weather call. Weather call will let you know if you have severe weather in your area, let you know what to do. Calls you for tornadoes, calls you back for confirmed tornadoes, calls you if there's severe thunderstorms or major extreme flash flooding. So always, again, to keep you and your family safe, because it's always ahead of time that we need to be thinking about the different ways to build our armor and make sure that we can be in our safe place if severe thunderstorms are to happen. And so we still have some time, hopefully, before that's the case. But weather call, when we think of our toolkit, the Mississippi Live Weather app, Code Red, NOAA Weather Radio, as well as the FEMA app, all good ways, again, to keep you and your family ahead of active weather. And again, you can see those QR codes there next to me, ways to pick up the app if you happen to be watching us on Facebook or any of the other social media such as YouTube as well. Our next live broadcast is going to be tonight at 10 o'clock here in the Room to Room Weather Center. One of the things I'll look at, I mentioned a minute ago and was not able to get it up in the commercial break there. We're going to look hour by hour at the temperatures on Saturday. The thing is though high temperatures around the 60-degree point, afternoon temperatures falling in some cases because of the cold air behind this. We will show that for you tonight at 10 o'clock, helping you plan ahead here in the Room to Room Weather Center. And of course, we're on every day, 6 and 10 p.m., 7 days a week, but Monday through Friday, 5, 6, and 10, 6:30, 7, 7:30 a.m. And in particular, Maggie McCauley in the morning. She will have all the updates related to where Mississippi Live Weather Radar, brought to you by Mama Justice, is tracking those showers around the region. We'll see you then.
Growing up, Gabe was naturally curious when he began to discover weather. Gabe just didn't want to know what was happening, but he wanted to know why it was happening. Gabe became fascinated with tornadoes and it impacted his life. He wanted to pursue a career in meteorology. Even though Gabe grew up in Alabama, Mississippi has now become his home and his family. And one thing about Gabe is he keeps his family safe.